Okay, I think we've hit a critical mass, so we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the Accessible Word Documents workshop that's being hosted by the Disability Equity Office. My name is Jessica McQuaig. I will be your facilitator today, and I am a Senior Digital Accessibility Specialist with the office. Okay, so just some Zoom webinar tips and logistics before we get started. Today we'll be using the Q&A feature in Zoom to submit questions, so please access that through your toolbar in Zoom. And we'll also be having some open group questions, which you can participate in by entering responses in the chat, and I'll review them there. We have ASL interpretation available, which can be accessed by clicking on the interpretation option in your Zoom menu and selecting American Sign Language. We also have CART transcription or live captioning, which can be turned on by selecting Show Captions, or you can use the stream text link that will be placed in the chat. This workshop is being recorded and it will be posted to the Equity, Civil Rights and Title IX or ECRT YouTube page, which is linked in the resources section of this slide deck. And the slide deck is going to be shared both in the chat and in a follow-up email after this session. If you go to open the slide deck, you're going to be prompted to enter a password. Please ignore the password field and instead click on the Read Only button in the lower left-hand corner of the dialog to open the slides. The link to download today's practice document will also be shared in the chat and after the session. You can follow along during the demonstration on a separate screen, or you can use it to practice remediation on your own time after the session. You're also going to receive the questions and responses that are entered into the Q&A, plus a link to an anonymous survey. We do ask that you fill out the survey so we know what you think, we know what to keep and what to improve for next time. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? Today, we're going to be learning about why digital accessibility matters, and then we'll be looking at the top 10 elements required for accessibility in Word documents. We'll then be taking a quick peek at the accessibility checker in Word, and I'll be sharing a checklist that you can use for creating accessible Word documents. And then we'll move into a demonstration in the practice document where I show you how to apply changes so that you have those elements present in your documents moving forward. So today we do invite you and encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A feature. There will also be opportunities, as I mentioned, to engage in the chat. It's important to keep in mind that we are all learning together. I'm an expert apparently in this area, and I still learn new things all the time because best practices and our technology continues to evolve. There's actually something that I learned about this morning that I'm going to share with you all today. So stay tuned for more. Okay, so we're here because of digital accessibility. Why is digital accessibility important? So there's a few different reasons that we need to be concerned about digital accessibility. The first is that it's just the right thing to do. So our mission at U of M suggests that we are going to challenge the present and enrich the future. And digital accessibility and building that into our work is a great way to do this. Ultimately, what digital accessibility will do is help all of us, but especially individuals with disabilities and those who use assistive technologies to access all of the digital content that we share and publish at the university. It also supports our operational objectives. So approximately 1 in 6 people around the world and 1 in 4 people in the United States who are working age adults live with a disability. When we make things digitally accessible, it means that more people are going to be able to engage with our services, our projects, our education, and the things that we put out into the world. So it's helping us reach a wider audience. It's also the law. So we do have compliance obligations that we need to fulfill, specifically under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. The Americans with Disabilities Act was recently updated, and digital accessibility has been really tightly defined now, and it's been pegged to a set of standards. And we are expected to make all of our content that we publish and distribute and utilize at the university digitally accessible by April 24th, 2026. So the date's coming up fast. This workshop's going to help you meet the expectations for your Word files. So thanks for being here today. Okay, so it's also important to understand assistive technology and how assistive technologies look and how they interact with the files that we're creating. So assistive technology refers to any item, piece of equipment, software, or system that enhances learning, working, and daily living for people with disabilities. There are a wide range of types of assistive technology, and these can include screen reader software, which essentially converts text to speech or reads things aloud. It can be dictation or voice control software where someone can operate a system using just their voice. Braille display, which is depicted in the upper left-hand corner of the slide, actually outputs text and content that is on a screen into the Braille format, and that refreshes so that people can read line by line. There are keyboards that folks can use to navigate through digital interfaces instead of using a traditional mouse. There are screen magnifiers to zoom in on things, and things like motion trackers that can actually allow someone to interact with content just using the motion of their eyes or their head or a different body part that, again, might be non-traditional. So there's lots of different types of assistive technology people may use. It's not just screen readers, although that is the type of assistive tech most people are familiar with. So now let's talk a little bit about the 10 elements for accessibility that we need to be thinking about for our Word documents. The first element that we need to consider is color. So color contrast is really important for readability, and high contrast is going to make it easier for everyone to distinguish between page elements. So whether that's text on background or the boundaries of a text box, having high contrast will help. So the way that we can implement high contrast is having dark color text or dark color elements on top of a light background, or vice versa. So having light color text or elements on top of a dark background. What we want to make sure we avoid wherever possible is placing images behind text. The reason for this is that the color profile in images varies across the image. And so often, even if you have good contrast in one section of the image, there might be poor contrast in another section of the image. If you are planning to post an image behind text, it's really important that you are either darkening that image or lightening it to increase the contrast between the text and the image. It's also important that we don't use color as the only way to distinguish between important visual elements, because 5 to 10% of individuals in the United States have something called color blindness or color vision deficiency, which is the newer term for that. The most common type of color vision deficiency is red-green deficiency, but there are other kinds. And so it is important to keep that in mind when you are designing. And I'm going to share some tools on the next slide that can help you with accommodating for color vision deficiency. So as an example, there is a pie chart which has 3 different colored sections up on the slide right now. There's an orange section, blue section, and a green section. For someone that has a type of color vision deficiency, what it may look like is this: different shades of gray or different shades of a color that is really hard to distinguish between the sections. So a way to improve the accessibility of this pie graph is to add labels. And so if we place labels on the colored portions for someone with color vision deficiency, what they will then see is also those sections with the labels that helps to distinguish between them. So it's not just color. There are other ways to do this. You can use patterns, you can use underlining, you can use outlines, you can use labels that have little like lines attached into them and moving outside of the object. So there's different ways to approach it, but the important thing is don't use color alone. On the next slide, there are some tools that you can reference for helping with color contrast, checking that you have high enough contrast, as well as doing color vision deficiency simulations so that you can see what your images and content might look like to someone with CVD. The next element we need to be thinking about in our Word documents is font. So we're going to learn about accessible fonts, but for any fonts that are not accessible, we want to use these either not at all or sparingly. because they take a lot of cognitive energy to read through. And so even for individuals that may not have cognitive processing disorders, they can be more tiresome to have to parse through. When we're writing our body text and even longer headings, we want to make sure that we're not capitalizing all of our letters, because having letters that are all the same height also is more tiring to read through. It's much harder for our brains to differentiate the letters and flow through the text. And so there's an example on this slide of a picture of the word typography that shows some of the variations in letter height. And this variation actually helps our brains move through the word and interpret the word more quickly. It's also important to minimize the use of italic text. Italic text makes font really decorative and, again, harder to read through. And in terms of font size, although there is no specific required size for making things accessible, a good reference point is font that is an Arial 12 point for documents that are going to be like in a Word format. It's a little bit different for presentations, but Arial 12 point is a good comparator. So if you are using a font face that is not Arial, what you can do is you can check it against Arial in 12 point and make sure the sizing is similar, and then you should have a font that is fairly legible for folks. If you want to go a little bit larger, going up to 16 point font can be helpful for some folks. In terms of accessible fonts, there are a couple of things that you want to look for when you're choosing your fonts. The first is checking out your characters in your fonts. So we want to make sure that characters are distinct from one another. That means they're differentiated enough in the way that they appear, that they have a standard width, height, and spacing between them, that they're not too thick or too thin. Both of these things can affect readability. And again, they're not too decorative, so they have few artistic embellishments. Characters that you can actually copy paste from the slide deck to check out if there's enough differentiation between them are listed on this slide. These are characters in the middle here that appear similar to one another and can actually, in some cases, be really hard to differentiate. So check these characters out. If they look too similar, you should probably avoid that font face. You'll notice that there are letters like D and B and P and Q. And even though these are mirrors of each other, for individuals that have cognitive disabilities like dyslexia, where processing letters can be challenging, if these two letters look too similar to each other, it can be, again, really cumbersome for brains to work out the difference between them and actually read them. So we do have some recommended fonts that are listed on this slide as well that you can use. This is not a definitive list. These are just suggestions. There are other fonts out there that you may want to use, but this is a good starting place. Okay, next thing we need to think about is use of paragraph styles. So paragraph styles help to define the role that pieces of text are playing in our document and are really important to assistive tech users. So one type of paragraph style is a heading. And headings help to define the heading structure in our file. Our document will always, or should always, have a title. However, we want to make sure that we are not assigning a title or subtitle style to our document titles. And the reason for this is because assistive technology doesn't reliably reference things that are labeled as titles or subtitles, especially in the document body. So instead, we want to start with heading level 1 in our paragraph styles and apply that to our document title. Beyond that, you can use headings levels 2 through 6 for section and subsection headings. We don't recommend going beyond heading level 6 because, again, assistive technology does not reference headings higher than that reliably. So try to structure your documents so you don't need more than 6 heading levels. It's important to remember not to skip heading levels when you're inserting them in your file when they're in ascending order. So I've got an example here where you can move from heading 1 to heading 2 for a section heading, then from that section heading level 2 to a subsection heading, heading level 3, and then down to a lower subsection heading, heading level 4. It's okay to jump backwards or in descending order between headings levels because that still semantically makes sense to users. So you can jump from a heading level 4 back up to a heading level 2. But what I can't do is skip from a heading level 2 to a heading level 4. That's going to break the document structure and be confusing to users. So instead of trying to apply heading levels that are not in the right order, you should be modifying your heading styles to stylistically appear how you want them to in the document. And I'll show you how to do that today during the demo. The benefits of having headings actually apply to all of us. So for assistive technology users, headings create jump to links and a way to browse through the document content and then very quickly navigate to sections of interest. So it's almost like a table of contents. For everybody else, we can use headings to create document outlines or navigation outlines for our document that are really helpful for users. We can also use them to populate a table of contents. And so I've got 2 resources linked on this slide that you can reference that will walk you through using the navigation pane, which I'll show you briefly today, and inserting a table of contents using your heading structure. Okay, so another type of paragraph style that we need to be thinking about is our body text. So this is all of the main text that we have in our document. It's important to try to use a consistent font for your body text so that people can differentiate it from headings and other callout boxes that you might have in your document. It's also important that if you are writing in English or another language that is written left to right, that you left align your body text and have a ragged right edge. Having that ragged right edge, again, helps our brains move through the text content a little bit more with a little bit more ease than if it's all justified or centered. And again, the reverse is true for languages that are read right to left. You would want to do the reverse and have those languages right aligned with that jagged left edge. And most of your body text should be in the regular or normal font face. So don't bold it all, don't italicize it all. Again, that's going to make it a lot harder to read and get through. The 4th element we need to be thinking about are lists. So there are 2 types of lists that you can insert into your documents. There are bulleted lists for unordered items, and then numbered lists, which you would want to use for items that have steps to them or need to be listed in like a series. When you are adding lists into your documents, you want to use the built-in list function, and I'll show you that today. And then to create nested items or sublist items, you want to make sure that you're using the increase indent button or your tab key to properly nest those sublist items. Again, this is going to create really important structure for assistive technology to be referencing. Another thing we need to keep in mind is the spacing that we add between our list items. We want to make sure that we are not using hard breaks in between our list items because that will actually break the list and then create 2 separate lists, or maybe 3 or 4, depending on how many hard breaks you put in between items. Again, that's really confusing for assistive tech users if they're hearing new lists announced every time one bullet point is read out. So I'm going to show you how to add spacing in properly using the spacing function in Word. And for lists, it's important that list items are brief. Paragraphs are usually not good list items. If you find yourself creating a list with a bunch of paragraphs, you might want to think about a different way to present that information. Breaking it up with headings might be a better approach. Another element we have in our documents are images. We have different types of images that we might be putting into our documents. The first type are informative images. These are images that are communicating some sort of important information to the reader, and we would want to make sure that assistive tech users also have access to understand what is happening in those images. So these images require alternative or alt text that describes what is depicted. In the past, and I'm going to update this before we send out the slides, these images had to be in line in Word to be read aloud at the intended time, but there's a new anchor function that was just introduced a couple months ago that I'm going to show you today. So we'll learn about the anchor function. There are also decorative images, and these are really used for like aesthetic purposes, layouting, and they are not communicating important information. These images should be marked as decorative in Word. What that does is it hides them from assistive text so that users don't have to listen to a description, because that can be really cumbersome and frustrating if it's not communicating any important information. There's some image types that you should always try to avoid, whether Word docs or other types of documents or digital content. One of these is GIFs. So GIFs are images that flicker, flash, and move. If you are going to use a GIF, limit it to 5 seconds maximum. There's a tool called Easy GIF that's linked on the slide that you can use to do that. It's going to help reduce the distraction level and also potentially triggering seizures for individuals that are photosensitive. And then we also want to avoid using graphics that replace true characters. So we don't want to use a graphic in place of a bullet for a list because it's not going to be read as an actual list item. We want to make sure we're not replacing letters because, again, it's not a true character that will be machine readable text. And we don't want to use them for punctuation. In terms of alt text, I have some guidance here. You've probably heard about this guidance before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But these are some tips for crafting good alt text that will be usable by the listener and also make sure that you're communicating the most important information. Something that I do want to mention is that image hyperlinks, which are basically stylized buttons, something that you click on. It's technically a picture, but it's linked, so it kind of looks like a button. Those, if you're adding alt text to them, it should describe where the link redirects to, not what the button looks like. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, tables are another element that you may have in your Word files, and we're going to spend a little bit of time in the demo looking at table accessibility today. But it's important to understand that tables are intended to present tabular data. This means structured information which can be organized into a grid of rows and columns, where each row is representing a unique category, and the cells within those rows are variables within that category. This table structure allows assistive technology to understand the relationship between cells. So if a screen reader was referencing the table in our practice document and it was structured correctly, the second row would be read as follows: day, Sunday, time, 12 to 1 p.m., task, ski lesson, row 2 of 6. So it provides really good relational data as well as gives the user an indicator of where they are in the table at the time. So I'm going to teach you how to structure your tables so that we have that outcome. Something to understand is that table accessibility features only get us so far for accessibility. Tables are tricky for individuals that use magnification because they don't reflow nicely. And so they can still be difficult for individuals with disabilities to utilize. And in some cases, you may still have to find a different way to present the information. So tables should not be used for layout purposes. They are meant to represent interconnected data. They need to have a defined header row, which I will be showing you how to add. They need to have a caption that kind of titles the table, as well as a hidden title and some alternative text that describes the overall content within the table. They should not contain blank, merged, or split cells because this can actually interfere with navigation of assistive technology from cell to cell. And they should not contain a table within a table because this can be a trap for assistive technology. They also should not have rows that break across pages because often what happens is those rows get interpreted as 2 separate rows instead of conjoined rows and conjoined cell content. An optional thing that you can do, and this helps with visual accessibility, is you can apply some visual styling, such as alternating color rows, and that can help just with visual navigation and more accessible navigation of your table in terms of differentiating between different rows. And I have linked on this slide a demo of a screen reader reading through an accessible Word table and an inaccessible one so that you can see what that's like for yourself. I also have a tip here if you want to maintain the look of blank or merged cells without actually having blank or merged cells. So if you would like to clear up some visual clutter in your tables and stylize them a little bit so they look cleaner, there's some guidance on this slide. I'm not going to cover this in depth today, but it is a reference point if this is something that you're interested in. Okay, links are another element we have in lots of our documents. So links need to be underlined. They should be a different color from the surrounding body text, and they should be descriptive. So the example I have here is read the and sample report sample report is the link, and that is the link text. So it actually describes what the link is going to redirect to. People who visually engage with documents are going to look for these visual cues to identify what is a hyperlink. And people who use assistive technology will have it announced to them that they've encountered a link, and then they will hear that descriptive text rather than a long URL read it, which is just gibberish and usually doesn't tell them when they're going to end up. So if you need to include a URL in your document, what we recommend is that you use a URL shortener that's going to dramatically reduce the length of that URL rather than inserting one that might have 100 plus characters in it. We also need to be considerate of the space that we include in our document. So when we're entering space, make sure that we're not using the enter key or hard breaks to increase space between our elements. I'll show you how to use the spacing function today to do that. When you insert hard breaks, what happens is those blank lines would be read aloud as blanks or blank paragraph. If there are enough of them, some assistive technology users think they've reached the end of the content and they may just stop navigating. So it's generally not a good practice to have them in there. We also want to make sure that we are leaving white space between our page element. That just helps to create like visual breathing room, and it makes it a little bit more comfortable to navigate a document if it's not super jam-packed with content. We want to consider readability as well. So differentiating our sections by using good heading structure, those visual breaks, so space, lines in between sections. We could use color blocking. I've also seen people use symbols to label thematic elements. So an example is in the image on the slide, which says organization of the course. And underneath, there are 4 differently colored icons. So there's one for lectures, which looks like a speech bubble, one for tutorials that looks like a screen with 3 people in front of it, one for readings that looks like an open book, and then one for assignments that has a picture of a document with a pencil. They also all have the word labels on top of them. So these are really good icons that can help to differentiate between sections of things like a syllabus. Make sure that you have your body text broken up as well into those short paragraphs. And a single column is preferred for readability. We recommend only going up to a max of 2 columns for something that is in portrait format. And again, that just helps with readability, and it's been shown to be the least tiresome structure of text to read in studies. So we want to make sure we're using clear language as well in our documents, or level appropriate language. So think about what is going to be easiest for people to understand and your audience. And then make sure that you're correctly using characters that you're inserting, because assistive technology is going to read what a character is, not what you're intending it to be. So some examples of characters that are commonly misused are the dash, minus sign, n dash, and m dash. They're all announced slightly differently, and it can be confusing when people are misusing those. Finally, the 10th element are our document properties, specifically the language and the title. So we want to make sure we are defining the language or languages that are within our document. And Word is really nice because it does allow you to define more than one language. We also want to make sure that we are inserting a document title, but that should be in the properties, not established at the top of your document in the body of your document. So with that, there are ways that you can help to guide your work and check your work as you're going. So we do have a document accessibility checklist that you can access through the link on this slide. And this helps you remember what these elements are and apply best practices. Microsoft also has a built-in accessibility checker, as well as a read aloud tool. And you can use both of these to kind of guide and review your work. But it is important to understand how to do these things manually, because the accessibility checker has limitations, which I'll show you momentarily. Now we're going to move into the demonstration. You can access a download copy of the practice document using the link that was placed in the chat. Okay, and then hopefully all of you can see the document up on my screen now. So in this document, we're going to look at all of these elements and how to apply changes. Before I move into that, are there any questions about the slide content that I should respond to?
This is Phil. Jess, we had
Yeah,
one question about merge cells and tables. I'm curious about merge cells and tables. Is that accessible for long rows slash titles as headings? And I know you touched on this a little bit live, but wanted to give you the chance to talk about that.
that's a great question. So there's actually a different way to apply a title to a table rather than merging one cell right across the top. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. Merge cells are confusing because as soon as you group cells together, assistive technology loses the structure of the table. So it doesn't understand how that merge cell is related to the cells around it. And so what happens is the information starts to turn into gibberish to end users. So that's why we recommend avoiding those. Some assistive technology actually can get trapped inside of the table when there are merged cells, and that creates a really poor user experience. So I will show you how to add a title that is not within the table itself. Good question. Were there any other questions?
This is Phil again. I don't
Yeah.
see any other questions that you can address right now. I'll type a few more responses to the ones that we are getting, though. Thanks, Jess.
Perfect. Let's keep going. All right, so I have my practice document up on the screen. Hopefully this is fairly visible to all of you. Oh, and I should clear the recording warning. So the first element that we're going to be looking at today is color. And so what I'm going to do to check color is I'm actually going to use my accessibility assistant. There are two ways that you can access the assistant, which does do a color check. So the first is in your lower toolbar in the Word application, there's a quick button that you can click to launch the accessibility assistant. You can also go into the review toolbar in your upper toolbar ribbon and then click on the check accessibility icon. And that will open up the accessibility assistant pane on the right of your screen. So the first item that the accessibility assistant checks for is color and contrast. So I'm going to check this to see where the warning is, and it is associated with the text box I have in my document. There is not enough contrast between the text box color and the text inside of it. So it's going to recommend some fixes. The first fix it recommends is changing the color of the text, and it offers me some colors. So I could choose to change my text to black, and then I would pass that contrast check. But I can also choose to change the shape fill. So if I click on shape fill, what it's going to offer me is a modified version, if high contrast only is checked off, of color options. And all of these colors that are showing up are going to be high enough contrast with my text. And so I might select a different blue color for the background, and then I will pass that contrast check. So that's how we can repair color in our document, and the same thing would apply to body text and heading text. It's important to note with our accessibility assistant, you might be tempted to just use this to fix up the document, but I'm going to show you something. Under document structure right now, we've got a check mark under no or beside no headings in the document. This looks like a positive thing. It looks like, oh, I don't have any heading errors, but in fact, it's because I have no headings to help with navigation. So the accessibility assistant is not going to catch everything. It still requires manual review, and it still requires knowledge of these elements and how to apply them. So this is just an assistant, as it says, assistant. It's not the magic wand that you're looking for. So let's learn how to fix up our headings next. Actually, let's do font choice. Okay, so in the practice document, we have 4 different fonts. So I'm going to get someone to drop those in the chat for me because I want to ask for your feedback on these. So the first font is Pacifico. That's our document title is in Pacifico. We have our text box font, which is Candara. We have our section heading font, which is Lobster. And then we have our body font here, which is Times New Roman. I'm curious in looking at these 4 fonts, which of these you feel is most accessible? I'm going to open up the chat to see what your responses are. So we're looking for the most accessible font. And you can just insert the number if you want that corresponds to the font in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of people voting for Candara, number 2. Can anyone tell me why Candara is the most accessible? And again, you can enter your response in the chat. Andy says no serifs and not italic. That's definitely a plus. Yes. So serifs don't necessarily have to be inaccessible, but really expressive serifs can make things harder to read, and serifs that connect letters can make font hard to read. And italicization does make font hard to read, so good catch there. Sharon says it's clean and spaced nicely. Yes, it does have nice spacing, consistent spacing between the letters. The letters do look really clean. They're a nice thickness. And then Tiffany says the size of the font is easy to read. So yeah, the font size also matters. So I would agree Candara is the most accessible. So let's see how we can, as we move forward, we're going to clean up some of these fonts and make them more accessible. Good work, y'all. Okay, so next we're going to look at our headings. We're going to start with our document title. So for our document title, we want to check and see, do we even have any headings in the document? Is this labeled a heading? We're going to do that using the navigation pane. So I'm going to go into View, and under the View ribbon, there's an option to turn on the navigation pane, which will appear on the left-hand side of your window. In the navigation pane, there is a tab called Document Map, and I'm going to open that up. Right now, my document map is empty. That means I have no defined headings in my document, and that's going to be a problem for navigation. So let's define some headings together. So with my document title, remember from the presentation, I want this to be a heading level 1. So I can click to select that. Oh, it's selecting a little bit strangely. I'm just going to click into it and then it should update. Okay, we're going to go back to our home toolbar ribbon with either the text selected or with our cursor inside of the text. And we're going to use our paragraph styles menu in the home ribbon to help define this as a heading level 1. So I can quick apply this style and define it as heading 1 just by clicking on the heading 1 pane. And now it is going to apply heading level 1 style. This is the default style. I personally don't like this very much. It's gotten rid of my manual styling. And so I'm going to reverse that by doing a Command Z or an undo. And then I am going to help to maintain the styling that I've applied by modifying the heading level. So again, with this selected or with my cursor in the font, I'm going to go into my styles menu. I'm going to hover over the heading level 1 option, and I'm going to right click. And I'm going to, I don't want all of those over this one. I'm going to select Update Heading 1 to match selection. And what you'll notice is the heading level 1 styling then updates to match what I have in my document, and it maintains my styling. So I, again, might want to make the font more accessible, but we're going to leave that for now. Then moving on to our heading level 2, for these ones, what I might want to do, so I'm going to go through and label these quickly. I'm going to label these as heading level 2. And in my document, I have 3 heading level 2s. I'm going to go and apply heading level 2 to all of these, and we will see them populating over in the navigation pane on the right-hand side. So this is creating a good navigation tool for people. Maybe I don't like this styling and I want to update it. So potentially I want to make this Candara to match with that first box because I know it's really legible. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to update heading level 2. And when I update heading level 2, the nice thing that's going to happen is it's going to update all of the heading level 2s in the document. So all of the styling is going to change, and that can save you time. So digital accessibility can also save all of us time. The next thing that we want to talk about is where to find additional heading levels, because if you're in your styles pane right now, you might notice it only lists up to heading level 3. And we said you can use up to heading level 6. So to see the rest of your heading levels, you're going to open up the styles pane, which will appear over to the right. And this is going to give you, if you change your list option from recommended to all styles, it will give you all of the available styles that you can define in your document. And so you'll notice it goes to heading 6, it goes beyond, but just use the heading level 6. Okay, now we're going to take a look at our body text because we can also use paragraph styles to define our body text. So with body text, the underlying style that we want to apply to that is a normal style. This is affiliated with a paragraph element. However, what's going to happen is if I update this to normal, I'm going to lose all of my formatting, and sometimes I might actually lose like the link. It might delete the link out of there. And so this isn't the best way to do this. And if I want to edit my text, so maybe I want to do Candara for my body text too. I might want to left align this under paragraph. I can adjust my alignment, and I want to remove the italicization. Oops. So if this is what I want, and then I go into styles and I try to update my normal style to match selection, it's going to update all of the undefined text in my document to that style, and it's deleting my links. So there's no more link styling here. It's still technically there, but I can't see it visually. So this is not a great way to update your body paragraph styles. I'm going to undo that. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over into my styles panel, and you can define a new style. You can type in a name for the style. So I'm going to name this body, and I'm going to model this after a paragraph. So I want this to be a paragraph element. And then I can make some adjustments to the appearance, and then I can click OK. And what that's going to do is if I have this checked off, this add to quick style list, it's going to add that to the list of options for paragraph styles so that I can access it for other types of body text. And what it will do is it will leave my link in place so that it is still functional and still visible. Okay, moving on, let's look at our list. So at the bottom of page 1, we have a list. So it is a combo list. It's got some numbers in here. It's got some bullets. It's got upper level list items and then lower level list items that are nested. It looks like a list, but is it truly a list? What we want to check to see if things are actually functioning as a list is if the built-in list style has been applied. I'm going to do that by opening up in the Home Toolbar ribbon, the paragraph options. And if this item was in fact a list item, what I would expect to see is this numbered list icon would be highlighted. It's not currently highlighted. So you can see this align left is highlighted. I'd want to see the same thing on the number icon. I'm not seeing that right now. And so that means this is not a true list item. It's just going to be read as paragraph text by assistive technology. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I am applying list styling. So I'm going to click my numbering option, and that's going to indent it, and it's going to create a true numbered list item, which is great. And instead of going down and doing that to the second item underneath, I'm going to move through this in order and stylize it just so that I'm not messing up the numbering that goes down, because it can start to interpret your bullet points a little bit weirdly. So we're going to clean it up bullet by bullet. I've got the same problem here with these hyphenated bullets. They're not actually true bullet points. These are not true list items. And this is also nested. So the best way to do this and the fastest way to do this is actually just to remove the little fake bullet point and then delete until you are back up with the line above it and hit your enter key. It's going to bump it down and it's going to create a list item that is a part of that upper level list. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to indent the item to nest it. So I can either use my paragraph indent tool like this, or you can use the tab key on your keyboard to do this. So as I do this, it's going to create a nice little nested list. And one of the problems that this is going to resolve too is right now I have these hard breaks in between my list items. So ultimately what is happening here is instead of just one consecutive list, I have 3 different lists here. That's how that's going to be interpreted by assistive tech. I need to remove these hard breaks. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to get rid of this hyphen. I'm going to backspace delete until I can just hit enter, move it down to the next line, and create a nested bullet. And this is going to do this really cleanly and quickly for you. I can do the same thing with my number 2 item. I'm going to do the backspace. It's going to move it up. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to number it as a D item. I don't want that to be a nested list item. And so I'm going to go back into that paragraph menu and hit the decrease indent button. And that's going to move that out to an upper level list item so that the numbering makes sense. Now, what you might notice here is I've lost my spacing between my list items. I can't apply hard breaks here, so I need to use the built-in spacing function tool. We're going to do that by selecting the text that we're interested in adding space in between. And then in our paragraph drop-down menu, we're going to select the spacing function, line and paragraph spacing. When I open that up, there's going to be a line spacing options dialog that I can open. And in this line spacing options dialog, you can set spacing before and after your paragraph items. You can also set the spacing in between each individual line. I've got it set to single right now, and I'm happy with that. So maybe I don't want any spacing before. I'm just going to do 0 points before, but maybe I'd like to see 10 points of spacing after in between my bullet points. Once I've input this, I can click OK, and I can hit enter. Oh, and I missed something. So the other thing that I need to do is I need to uncheck the don't add space between paragraphs of the same style, because these are styled the same. So if I uncheck that and then hit enter, voila, I now have lovely spacing between my list items, and I still have a complete list that will be interpreted correctly by assistive technology. Okay, so those are our list items. Next, let's talk about our images. So we have 2 types of images in this document. Up at the top of the document, we have these little snowflakes, and I don't really need people that are using assistive tech to know there are decorative snowflakes here. They're really, again, just for visual styling. So I don't want to waste user time on this. I need to mark these as decorative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the image, and then I need to be able to open up my alt text pane. There are 2 ways to do this. You can right click on the image while it's selected, and you can scroll down until you see view alt text, and that will open the pane. The other way you can do this is by going into your graphics format or your picture format ribbon. And in this ribbon, there will be an option for alt text. If I click on this, it's going to open up the alt text pane on the right. Now, this item was actually generated within Word, and so it already has some alt text associated with it, which is helpful. But in this case, I want to mark it as decorative. And so down below the text box to add alt text, there's a mark as decorative option. I'm going to toggle this on. Then the alt text box will gray out, and they know that this has successfully been marked as decorative. I want to do the same thing for this other snowflake. I recommend clicking out of the image into some text, and then clicking on the second image and giving it a minute for the alt text pane to reset. So it's reset now, it's associated with the image I have selected. I'm going to do the same thing and toggle on mark as decorative. If you move directly from image to image, sometimes the window doesn't reset and you're actually not working on the alt text for the image that you have selected or that you think you're working on. Scrolling down, I also have this informative image. I might want people to know this is here. So if I select this image, I want to add some alt text. And so I'm going to write child skiing down gentle slope. Okay, I'm happy with that. But there's also this option here, generate alt text for me. This is an AI tool. You can use this. However, I'm going to show you what happens. I'm going to click generate alt text for me. It says a child skiing on the snow. It's not terrible. Maybe I want to use this. I might want to fix it up a little bit. I either need to come in and make edits, and as soon as I start making edits, it's going to remove that AI warning, or I need to select approve alt text. If I do not select approve alt text or make edits, this AI warning is going to remain as a part of your alt text. And that's important because what that tells the end user is nobody reviewed this to make sure that this was accurate, and this might not actually be a reliable source of information. So if you want to use the AI alt text, either make some edits or toggle on approve alt text, and it will remove the AI warning. Okay, I'm going to close that now. So we've learned how to work on our images. Next, we have our table on page 2. So I'm going to scroll down to page 2 here. So for this table, there are a few things that we need to do to make it accessible. The first is we need to add in a caption that is effectively going to act like a title. So someone asked about adding an emerged cell for the title. This is how we want to do it, is add a caption. So I'm going to select all of the content in the table, and then I'm going to go into the references ribbon. and I'm going to select Insert Caption. When this window opens up, we want to make sure that we have the option or the label set to table. There are a few different ones. You can label equations, figures, or tables. So I want to make sure I have table set. And then I can enter in a title. And so in this case, it's a sample. I want to make sure I have the space. Sample schedule for learning to ski. So once that's entered, I can select where I want this to display, either above or below. I'd like it to display above just so that it's announced first to assistive technology. I'm going to select OK. And then this caption is going to get inserted. And you can stylize this however you want visually. Then in the table, I also need to make a couple of changes. So with my cursor inside of the table, I'm going to select this upper level row. This is my header row. And I'm going to either right click or I'm going to go into my table design panel. By right click, I'm going to select table properties. And it's going to open up my table properties window. Inside of this window, I need to, with the header row selected, select the checkbox in the row tab beside repeat as header row at the top of each page. This is what is going to designate this as the official header row in the table for assistive tech. I also need to stop my rows from breaking across pages. So I need to uncheck the allow row to break across pages option. I can either select all of my rows at once and uncheck this, or I can use this tool down here, the previous row and next row buttons, to move between my rows and uncheck that one by one. So I'd like to deselect that for each. Okay, and then there are two more things that we need to do here. So the second thing we need, or the last thing we need to do is go to the alt text tab. We need to enter another title. So this is important because assistive text references different points for titles. So just, it might feel like duplicate work, but do it here too. So we're gonna say sample schedule for learning to ski. And then we're gonna add a description. So I might say table outlining tasks to prepare for skiing, organized by day of week with assigned times indicated. So that would be a description of the content inside of the table, and then I would click OK, and all of that information would be applied in the background for this table. So that's how we make our tables more accessible. All right, we're 12:54. We just got a couple more things to do, and then we've made our practice document accessible. So the next thing we're going to talk about are our links. So right now I have this Learn More link, and it's actually redirecting to an online article called What to Expect for Your First Ski Lesson. But right now, Learn More is what's going to be announced to an assistive tech user, and that is not helpful. It's not telling them where they're going to end up. So I want to update this link text. So to do this, you can either highlight the link and right click, and then select hyperlink, edit hyperlink, or you can go into your insert menu in your toolbar ribbon, and there is a link drop-down menu. And if you select a link from that menu, it will open up the link dialog box where you can edit your hyperlink. So here I can edit the text that gets displayed, and I might just want to input the title of the article because that helps explain what it's going to. So I'm going to say what to expect for your first ski lesson. I'm going to hit OK, and then it's going to update the link text in the document. I might want to add a little intro and say, learn more by reading what to expect for your first ski lesson. And now that's more descriptive for folks. Okay. Now, finally, we want to make sure that we're setting some properties for our document that's going to help people understand the language. So to set the language for your document, you need to select all of the text first, and this is the easiest way to do it, is to set the primary language first. Select all, so you can do Control A, Command A, or you can drag and highlight everything. And we're going to go into our references pane, or sorry, our review pane, review. We're going to open up our review ribbon, and there is a language option. When I open up the language dialog box, it's going to allow me to mark the selected text as a certain language. In this case, I'm going to select English US, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I've applied English as the primary language. However, there's some French in this document. So in this body paragraph, we've referenced après-ski activities. And so we want to define this as French. And so I'm going to go back into that language dialog and I'm going to mark this selection of text as French and select OK. And you can do this for a lot of different languages and individually mark where the language changes. And this is important so that read aloud technology pronounces words correctly in a way that makes sense. And then the final step for making this document accessible, we're going to go up into the upper level file menu in Word. We are going to open up the document properties window. And in the summary tab, we are going to input a title. And so in this case, I'm going to say learn to ski practice document. You can also set additional metadata here, like the author. You can indicate the company. I'm just going to put this title in. It's important to put it here because some assistive tech is going to reference this and announce this when the window is selected. It's going to say, this is what window is open right now. This is the item that's open, rather than going into the body of your document and looking for that heading level 1. So I'm going to select OK. And now I've applied a title. And once I've made all these changes, I want to save my document so that the changes apply. And now you have an accessible document. So I know we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions that have come in that I can answer.
Hi, Jessica. This is Phil. We have a
Yeah.
question about language. For language,
Yes.
should we uncheck detect language automatically?
So yes, you can uncheck that if you are going in and defining it. That's effectively there for people that don't take the time to go in and define the languages. It's supposed to help users by having the program like auto detect the language and announce it properly, but it's not perfect. So once you've set and defined your languages, you can uncheck that and it will use what you have defined as the source of truth.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah. What other
This,
questions do we have? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, this is Phil. There's a question from an anonymous attendee. Was there a new anchor feature mentioned regarding images that Jess wanted to demonstrate?
Oh, there sure was. Thank you. I forgot it, and I'm going to go back. So in the past, you had to make your informative images set to inline, which is an alignment within the wrap text functions in order for it to be read at the right place. I'm so glad you mentioned this because Word recently updated it. And when you set things to inline, it can make your document look really funky and push all of your text around. Now we have this beautiful little anchor tool where you can drag and drop the anchor to the beginning of a line. And what that does is that indicates where this image alt text is going to be announced and read to users. So I can have it read just before this section heading, and I'm in control of that now without messing up the formatting of my document. So glad you mentioned that. Great questions. So for other questions that came in, we are going to distribute those as well as the answers to the group and follow-up email. But for now, I'm going to move back into my slideshow to wrap things up. So there are some additional resources in the deck that you are going to receive. We have information on additional digital accessibility resources at the university and ways that you can be strategizing around making your materials digitally accessible. There's also a section on all of the resources available through the Disability Equity Office, including our upcoming presentations, the services that we offer and how to get in touch with us, how to request training from us, how to report barriers to accessibility that you or other people encounter. And there's also information about how to voluntarily identify as someone with a disability at the university, which really helps us understand the population here and effectively advocate for resources to support folks. And there's more learning opportunities and the link to our YouTube channel where this recording will be posted. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you found this helpful, and please fill out the survey so that I understand what to improve next time.